I'm not the guy that like tried one thing and it all figured out and I found myself and I found my purpose and I was like, cool, yeah, I've got it all figured out. It's like, no, like I spent 8 years on 8 different business models trying to make it work.
What's up, everyone? I'm back here with Mikele Kuhar, and he's come around and stayed with me for the weekend, and we're jamming out this podcast because obviously we're both men's coaches, and we've just been talking about crazy stuff all weekend, and it's been amazing, man. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, it was quite the journey to get here.
Yeah, this is the second round.
This is the second round. So just a little side note, director's cut behind the scenes. Corey's laptop died yesterday, 45 minutes into a podcast. So here we are again. Doing it again.
Yeah, we thought it was really good, so we've taken down some notes for what that we're like actually going to be doing and talking about and stuff. So yeah, we're going to go through some notes, which is going to be awesome. So we got some talking points. And Mikele, essentially, because Mikele's helping guys go through like such massive transformational journeys, what is like the main thing that you experience guys are like suffering from, or stuff that you help guys with as well?
I wouldn't really say the main thing, but more so, I guess it kind of is like the constant of what is always prevalent and showing up in the process that a lot of dudes are working through. And it's essentially like being able to articulate how they're feeling and understand how they're feeling, but also not look at it from a point of like, this is good or bad, and understand that like this is the ebbs and flows of life. And the biggest thing is like communication. Like I share quite a bit that for men to explain emotions, it's like trying to describe a color. Like, how do you describe blue to someone? And it's through the process of like, you know, the first time you picked up a basketball or grabbed a footy, you were no good at it. And it's the same with like processing, understanding, and articulating your emotions. It's fucking really hard sometimes. I find it hard at times, like when I'm just like, oh, my like partner Selena's asking me like, well, how does that make you feel? And I'm like, I'm not sure. And it just takes time. Like you need to be able to sit in that and let that kind of uncover and reveal itself. And sometimes it might not come to you straight away, but it's the practice of consistently trying to voice how you're feeling and what's coming up for you. But then also having the space to do that, whether that's a partner or in a friendship circle, because a lot of dudes don't have that. And when then they do have that, it's like, oh, like you guys are going through that too? Like a lot of guys think, we all think it's like that we need to carry this big bag of shit on our back for the rest of our life and just hold it down and keep it all together. When the reality is you can do that, but at the detriment of what? Like what is that costing you in life?
Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of like overwhelming like pressure. Essentially, I'd love to hear you speak on how... Well, we've been talking about how people, when they come to you, have a certain perception, and how you sort of challenge people's beliefs and to be like, everything that you believe right now isn't real.
It's as real as you believe it to be. Like the perception is everything in life. And the biggest thing that people, when they get to a stage and understand that like your world and the world are two completely different things. Like an example I used with you yesterday is if I was to say the word relationships, what does that mean to you? And you could have 5 different, 10 different, 20 different answers and what that looks like. Which one's true? You believe yours is fucking true. Like that is like how could you argue this? This is what I've experienced in life. And that's the key point. Like everything you believe about life is due to your experiences. You know, an event happens, you create a story around it, and that turns into a belief. And that consistently shows up in life for everyone. Whether like I can't like that's so true for me and you and everyone. So when you can really be able to step back and look at things objectively, it gives you a bird's eye view of the situation. And you're not looking through this singular lens of like, that's just how things are. Because when you look at everything in life through that, like girls always cheat, like guys can't be trusted in relationships. Like you're going to not only attract that, but you're only going to notice that as well. Like the example I use is when you've ever like gone to be buying a car or like a new pair of shoes, and they're top of mind. So then when you go out there, you start to notice that everywhere. You start to notice that, oh, I never saw that car before, it's there. It's like the exact same things happen with the belief and views you have about the world.
I love the example that you use specifically in relationships, like especially men putting pressure on themselves to like either provide or something. I know you could speak to this better. It's like having the beach ball and pushing it down into a pool. Can you please speak on that?
Yeah, look, as dudes, a lot of the time, we avoid feeling a certain way. We avoid a conversation. We avoid that thing we know we should be doing, but we're not. Just
quickly, why do you think we avoid those things, just in general?
Yeah, well, we believe if we don't give it attention and energy, it'll go away. Like, and it's also...
Sorry, just pause you there. That is, like, if we're believing that we don't give anything attention for whatever it is, that it'll go away, I think can speak to, like, almost everyone. Man, that is just crazy. And it's like you're just trying to hold it all together. So I just wanted to bring that to attention. What Mikele said then was wild. Please continue.
Yeah, and it's... When you really understand that none of this shit will go away, like our body works in the space of like every single thing that happens in life, we remember it. So, when you're sitting there at lunch sometimes and you have that flashback when you were 12 years old, it's like, where does that come from? Like our subconscious stores that, our subconscious processing power is like 95 to 97%. Conscious mind, 3 to 5. Science has shown that. That's just not me making up a fact right now. But it's also like when we bring it back to like, what you don't take care of, you don't care about. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to the gym because I'm not looking about it. It's like, well, you don't care about your health. It's like, yeah, no, I care about my health. It's like, what are your actions right now? And when we talk about the beach ball analogy, which I absolutely love, is like when guys have emotions and we don't process them. If you envision like a swimming pool and you have a beach ball and you're pushing that beach ball down, it's like avoiding that emotion and that feeling. And the more you avoid it, the further you push it down. And what happens, the deeper you push a beach ball down in a pool, eventually it fucking shoots up, hits you in the face, or it comes out of like a random spot in the pool. And that's like in life, like you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, and all of a sudden you get out of the car and you smack them in the face. Or you just absolutely lose your shit and you're in a relationship with someone and they say something and you just blow up and they're confused. And then later on you like process it. You're like, why did I react like that? Like, what is that thing? It's like, well, you have all these unaddressed issues that maybe like we spoke about yesterday with like the loops of life. Things will happen in life, and if you choose to avoid them, you'll consistently be leaving these loops open and unaddressed. And these are threads that interconnect through everything in life. So an example would be in a relationship and there's something you haven't voiced, like something maybe they triggered you or you haven't feel appreciated or respected or whatever that is. It's like, if you don't address that and have a conversation around that and feel safe to express that, you will bring that through to the whole relationship. And what happens then is you build resentment. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's like only bad for you. And it'll project in certain ways in relationships. This is like friendships, dynamics, everything as well. And also with yourself. Like the biggest way to build self-belief and self-confidence for someone is honoring your word. When you say you're going to start a diet on Monday, when you say you're going to start a new online program, when you say you're going to go for that new job and you don't do it, when you say you're going to do your homework and you don't do it, like you could lie and cheat. Like I'd done that all through school. I just fucking cheated my whole way through like homework and everything. And that manifests in a way of a lack of self-belief because you've never seen anything through. And it doesn't matter if you convince everyone in the boardroom that you done that task. And whether no one sees it or not, and you carry that with you like everywhere you go.
It's a dark energy.
And on the thread aspect, like in relationships and things you believe about yourself, if you never let them go full circle and close that thread, it'll continue through. Like I was in a relationship when 23, 24, and I was working with a coach at the time. And this is an example of an open thread. So we were in a relationship and we'd had a few conversations around, what do you want to do this year? Like what kind of like, and she was super excited with just traveling. She's like traveling 9-12 months, wants to go see it all. I was in like grind scale mode. I wanted to like build my business. Like I wanted to create more income. I wanted to put money aside. And when I had this call with my coach, we would go through the 3: health, wealth, relationships. We get to relationships and he's like, so how's your relationship? I'm like, yeah, good. Like, she wants to go travel, and I kind of want to build a business, but you know, it's cool. And he's like, and this is the importance of having like a third party that can objectively view it. It's like asking good questions. It's like, have you had the conversation around that? I'm like, no. It's like,
no, but it's all good.
Yeah. Why not? It's like, oh, I was scared of the outcome of that conversation, and obviously I had to then go have that conversation. And what eventuated from that conversation was like me expressing like, hey, in the next 12 months, like, this is my truth right now, and this is what I want to do. And she wants to travel. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah. The conversation kind of died off a bit more, like went back to doing what we're doing. And then a few days later, we caught up again, and we ended up breaking up because the mountaintops we were looking at were just in different directions. And when we had that conversation, then she came over the next day or next couple of days to grab all her stuff. And when she came over, this is the first time in my life where I've gone through what I would say like a conscious breakup. And by conscious, I mean like everything's out on the table. This is exactly how I feel. And like I was understood, she was understood in that dynamic. And we laid down, we hugged, we cried. 10, 15 minutes, she grabbed her stuff, she left. And she left out the back door, and I had to walk through the kitchen where like my 3 friends that I live with, and I'm walking past all of them, and they can like, we didn't really look at them, they can tell something's up. And then I came back in, and I'm just like, I'm not sure how, like, I'm feeling a lot of fucking emotions right now. I just went straight to my room. I didn't even look at them. I went in my room and I just cried. I cried for like 10, 15 minutes, but it wasn't like tears of sadness. It was like something I'd never experienced before, which was like tears of absolute joy. Like, I'm so fucking happy for her that she's living her truth and I'm living mine. Because past relationships I break up via text. I'd be an absolute dick until they broke up with me because I didn't want to be the bad guy. And it's like, hey, there's no responsibility if you break up with me. And these are just all avoidant behaviors. And then what led to that was like, you know, I'm not going to go send it on the weekend and drink and take drugs or sleep around or even just jump on Tinder and like chat to girls and get that like that validation from that. I just cut myself from everything. And it was like 5-6 weeks later. Sometimes, you know, when the penny just drops, you've been trying to figure out this problem and you've been trying to work through this thing, and all of a sudden you're driving your car and you're like, oh, I get it now. It's like, I think Tony Robbins says your life can change in a moment or an instant or something like that. And it landed. I was like, I'm good now. Like, I'm ready to go date, and my cup's full, and whatever I bring into it right now is going to complement that. And that's an example of closing the thread. So I didn't go start sleeping around with girls and date to fill a hole, because then that would be bringing what I was already lacking in myself into that relationship. And then I'm looking to fill that with someone else. So that's like an example of like a bigger thread, closing that off. But then there's the mini cycles and the mini threads as well of like, you say you're going to do something, you don't do it. You say you're going to do another thing, you don't do it. And then all of a sudden you build this belief to yourself, like whether you're conscious or not conscious of it, it's like, I never finish anything.
Dude, I love this thread theory so much. Because it's anything that you ever said. Like, I remember I had to get this guy out. This guy that had to get on a podcast, and I can't wait to jump on a podcast with him. But I had to fill out these forms before getting on to do like a blood test analysis before. But I just run out of time. So it's like an hour and a half worth of filling out a form. So I'm like, I just can't do it at the moment. It's been in the back of my mind. And he messaged me again, and I'm like, all right, let's book the podcast in so I have some accountability, so I actually have to do it. But for like 2 months of not closing that thread, I think about it every now and then, and I like pride myself on integrity, but it was just left open. There was no like integrity, like, yeah, we'll do it. And then like it didn't go anywhere. I've just been thinking about it at nighttime. This isn't just a relationship thing, but I think the importance of understanding all these little things that you've mentioned and the threads that you need to close, and just having the awareness of that. And like, for anyone who's listening, if you're thinking of this and you're like, oh man, there's threads I need to close, like close them.
Yeah. Like, honestly, if anyone's listening to this right now, like what I would say to you, like, what is that one thing? What is that one conversation you've been needing to have for so long? Have it. Like, have it and drop Corey a message and let him know how it goes. Drop me a message and let us know how it goes, because that will free up. So you don't even realize the mental and like energetic capacity that takes up. There's an old a Buddhist story where there's 2 monks, and you know, monks, the vows they take, they can't, you know, obviously sleep with women or even touch women to that extent. So there's 2 monks at the side of a river, and they come up to the river, and there's an old woman there, and it's like, you know, knee deep. So she's like, she can't cross. And the older monk says to the younger monk, you know, like, hold my stuff, I'm going to help her across. And he puts her on his back and he walks across the river with her. And then he puts her down the other side, and the young monk is in disbelief. He's like, how you know the rule? Like, you can't do that. Like, how can you just pick her up and carry her across? And an hour passed, 2 hours passed, they're still walking. He's still going on about it. And the older monk says to him, like, you're still holding on to that. I put her down back at the river. And it's like, for so long we can carry these things in our life, and it's not the thing itself, but it's the compounded time you think about it and how that affects you. Like, that if you're thinking about that thing right now that you need to voice, you need to say that conversation, how long have you been thinking about that, and how often? You think about it 4 or 5 times a week, twice a week. It's like, how many hours have you spent thinking on this thing? You're avoiding ripping off the Band-Aid because there's that moment of discomfort and pain, but the relief it's going to give you is like, you can't put a price on that.
Dude, it's like astronomical. I got 2 questions for you, and I'm not sure how you want to ask them. One is, why do you think they're big questions? Why do you think men struggle to get vulnerable? Some guys are great, but there's a majority of people that I'm exposed to, so my reality, it's a lot of people struggle for it. And then where do you find, like, where and how do you find the most freedom?
So the first one, we've just never learnt that it's okay, or experience to it. You know, a super common experience guys have is, you know, they fall over when they're younger, they scrape their knee, they're bleeding or something, and they go to cry, and there's a group of friends or their dad or a group of guys that are just like, yo, just toughen up, bro, like, stop crying. Like, that's not, and I don't want to use the cliche like men don't cry thing, but it's the same when you're older and you lose your job, or you have a breakup with a relationship, or you voice to friends that you're like, maybe you're overweight and you're really self-conscious about your body, and like, that conversation never gets explored. It's like, yeah, bro, like, you know, yeah, but just get to the gym this week. And like, we never learn that it's safe to have these conversations. So when you can start to have these conversations and really like explain and like navigate these emotions and feelings, that is what allows you to, I've actually forgotten your initial question there.
So it's like, why do you think men
they learn that it's safe, because before that they didn't know that, so their experience up to that is like, oh, I don't do this, and that becomes like, you know,
fear of judgment or something.
Event, story, belief. It's like an event happened, you created a story around it, and then you've made that a belief and like true to yourself, so you never go there, and then you suppress, avoid, and just ignore.
Wow. And then the other one is like, where do you and how do you find like the most freedom within yourself? Is it within your relationship with Selena, or is it like, you know, for you, when you've experienced the most freedom, like how did you find that?
Experience the most freedom for myself. It's on that other side of like discomfort. It's when I'm in a place where like I've come in and I've authentically like shown up in what I wanted to say in the moment, and I didn't give a cliche answer or say what I think, like people pleased, like said what I thought people wanted to hear from me, and I've just expressed how I really am. And that has been so freeing when I got rid of this fucking pre-framed idea of how I need to show up. Like when I used to do like high school speaking and go around and speak to at schools about emotional intelligence and things like that, and I thought I needed to show up in a different way online, like this motivational speaker, and I was posting quotes and I was like reciting all these phrases, and it wasn't landing. Like I felt like a bit incongruent doing it, because like, oh, this is like other people's theories and concepts, and I'm just like kind of grabbing them and like not copy and pasting to an extent, but I'm just like, I'm looking at how everyone else is showing up. I'm like, oh, I need to be that. And it's like, you fucking don't. Like the reason people are attracted to you and the coaching you do and the coaching I do is because you show up authentically you. You're like high energy, like swearing and just like yelling at the camera, like running down the beach. And it's like, we fucking lack so much authenticity, especially online these days. And when people see that, they can feel that. We're in a society where everyone's trying to sell and convince us of something. As soon as you open your phone, you're getting hit with something. So it's like our bullshit meters are so acute and so sensitive to when someone's... And people think they can get past that, but it's the exact same in like day to day when you're chatting to like friends and stuff, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm all good with that breakup, man. Like it's cool. And she's like, okay, It's just like, it's whether you have the people around you who are like willing to question that. Yeah.
Pull you out. Oh, I think that's so important, especially with people around you. And you also had like, as well, because you've been living in Bali for ages now. Thanks for coming to Australia and visit. Woohoo!
Yeah, just 6 hours, 6 hours of flying, 2 flights. I'm here.
Yeah, woo!
Just for the podcast.
Yeah, just flying just for the potty. Woo, my man. But also in there you had like, which I think is so interesting. We're talking about it. You experienced like the culture shock coming back to here, and I really want to like take a moment just to talk about this as sort of to like wake people up a little bit, because a lot of people will blame themselves, like get down on themselves, like, oh, why can't I have this, or have like a victim mindset, or I really want to live a life like this, and I really want to do this. And like in Australia, obviously you got like your own reality with things, and depending on where you are in Australia, but you come back, you had a bit of a shock of being like, whoa, what? And even like we're in Gold Coast right now, it's sunny all day, but it was cold in the morning, and Mikele was like, oh God, I can't wait to get back home. Like, fuck this. But I'd love to you just explain like your culture shock experience coming back.
Other than the $6 avocado extra on the side at breakfast, which blew my mind.
The prices of things are great. We were just looking at stuff, and Mikele would just get going like, wow, how's the price for this?
Yeah.
Wow, how's the price?
The thing with, yeah, like now, I want to pre-frame this because this is essentially like my opinion and my experience. So I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong, or one's good or one's bad. Like, I was exactly in the space of what I saw as well, like just years ago. So it's purely just my opinion and what I've experienced coming back. And it's given me a lot of gratitude and also a reminder of what I do want and what I don't want in life. And I was dropping my mum at work one morning, and it was like cloudy, overcast, rainy, bumper to bumper traffic. And I'm sitting there and I look across, and you can see the line of cars of people going all the other way. And I just start looking at like everyone's faces and where they're at. And it's just felt so like automatic and robotic in a way, where like everyone had very similar posture. They're sitting there. Like even what's coming up for me right now is like, I don't want to be like, oh, look at all these people that are like trapped in the matrix and all this kind of stuff. Like, it was just literally like what I've been exposed to in the last few years, and what is potential, what potential there is for life. Like, I've met people over there that are earning like $100,000 a month doing something online that I never even knew existed, you know? Or they're living a lifestyle that's just like, to me, it's like, I didn't even know that was possible. And I thought it was just something in movies, or you see in a YouTube clip or something. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, like you're almost like trapped in this space of like waking up every single day and going through the 2-hour journey to work, the 8 hours in an office desk, the 2-hour journey back, or whatever that looks like. And I can only say this because like I've experienced both sides, and like I'm not the guy that like tried one thing and it all figured out and I found myself and I found my purpose and I was like, cool, yeah, I've got it all figured out. It's like, no, like I spent 8 years on 8 different business models trying to make it work, and I was following the money for a big part of that. I was trying to make more money because I thought money would give me freedom. But when I realized finding something that I was really in love with and really lit me up is the thing that gave me freedom, the money came after. And like, if anyone's listening to this, like, you have that internal call to do something more and different in life. You can only avoid that for so long. Like, I truly believe that's why a lot of dudes go through midlife crises, because there's this internal like, oh, I was meant to do more and be more and have more, but I never done it, and now I just need a red sports car or whatever that looks like. So
I call it hobby syndrome is what I call it.
Hobby syndrome.
Like, don't want to suffer from hobby syndrome, bro.
Yeah. And like I say, if you're in that space right now and you know you want and be and have more, like, try some shit. Like, I tried some shit. If I sat there and just kept reading books on how to do and what to do and how to find your purpose, and if you're this personality type, you should do this, I could sit there and be the lounge chair coach of life. You know, the dudes who sit there and watch sports and they're like, oh, he should be doing this. Or like, when I was in high school, I used to play with this guy and he was never like, you have an opinion on everything, but like, what have you actually done in your life? And you need to try a few shoes on to find the one that really fits. And now I've really found that thing. And the 8 years of, you know, some of those businesses like cost me money. Some of them made a bit. But the people I've met, the skills I acquired and the networks I manifested from that all compounded when I moved over to Bali. And I didn't just like pack up shop and go over to Bali and like it's all going to figure itself out. Like I was in construction for 8 years and I picked up a camera because I wanted to be famous on YouTube. I wanted to start being the next vlog kid, and vlogging's tough. It consumes you, editing, blah, blah, all that. Anyway, so the intention was off and I put the camera down for 6 months and I picked it back up because a friend asked me a very important question. I was like, what would you do every single day, whether you're paid for it or not? And this like really rocked my world because at the time I was like, I just need to make more money. And when I like started to just create from a space of like, I just enjoy doing this, it gave me newfound energy that I didn't have before. And I would work 8-9 hours construction. I'd go to the gym for a couple hours. I'd come home and I'd edit till 8 p.m., 7 p.m. till 1 a.m. a lot of the time. Because I knew if I wanted to make this move to Bali, this dream over a couple of beers, I'd always say to the boys, if I really wanted to do this, I needed to acquire a skill set. There were things I needed to learn. I identified what they are and I learned them. Like we're talking about doing a 1 minute video edit and it's taking me like 12 hours because I'm like YouTube tutorial, 10 minutes editing, YouTube tutorial, I click a button, everything disappears. Like I don't know. So it's like I acquired that and then I set myself up. Like a lot of people will, rinse and repeat quotes like buy a ticket, fall in love, get a tan, travel. Like it's like, yes, cool, great. But like, what are the tangible tactical things you need to do before that? And then I had that and I was in a space where I was like completely debt free, went overseas. And when my intention was completely different, everything showed up. I mean, we created content together. I created content with a lot of people here in Adelaide and that just started to open up doors. Like I sometimes I just really want to grab people and like let them know like, whatever fucking excites you, do that. Because whether you're in love with anime, like you can monetize everything. We're in a day and age where you can have an online store set up in 8 hours online and running traffic to it if you have the skill set to do so. But it's like identify the lifestyle you want and then just identify the skills you need to learn. It is literally just acquiring skills in life. And that's the same with relationships. If your relationships keep falling apart or you feel like you can't communicate in certain ways, there are a lot of people out there and a lot of books, literature, or like that you can acquire skill sets to get better at. There's literally the only person stopping you is you right now.
Do you feel that you doing these things and learning all this stuff has like, and committing to it has helped you within your relationship?
Yeah.
Like, how so?
It's given me such a deeper understanding of myself. Like the thing I always share with my clients, it's like what we take from the fitness space, stress adaptation. It's like I put myself in controlled stress situations over and over and over, and that's when the lesson has been ingrained. Like I thought I wanted to be a high school speaker. I thought I wanted to empower, inspire teenagers. And then when I'd done that, I'd speak and do the presentation, and internally there was a part of me like, I'm not super excited by this. I thought I was leaving the school, the kids were crying, I was hugging them, and then like I'd drive home and be like, am I a bad person? Because this isn't the thing. And I was like judging myself a lot for that. And I've forgotten what you're saying again.
I was saying like, is your commitment to all these things, moving to Bali, committing to the things, finding out what you want to do after all this period of time and finally having that has allowed you the space to be like, I'm going to like manage a healthy relationship. Because we were talking about this literally before we jumped on. We're like, man, relationships take up a lot of energy.
Yeah.
You sort of have to be ready emotionally and like mentally first before financially, I believe, to be able to like hold that down and balance it with like what you want to do. So like, how's that working? Like, how do you believe that was true with the committing?
Like putting yourself in all these like stressful states and learning from that has given me, like, the more you can understand yourself, the more you can leverage that in every other, your strengths, your weaknesses, and like, how you show up in a relationship. So like, it's not like you're switching off the lights and walking into a room. It's like you're turning the lights on in there and you can see everything that's there and you can see what's about to happen and what's happened in the past and why it could.
And we were talking about this over the weekend as well, which I think is really important, is like resolving conversations with your partner and able to have the communication and the skill set to be able to do so, and being in a position where either they're triggered or you're triggered, and then you talk about what's coming up, especially as a guy, and then you have that resolving conversation, communication, and then immediately you just get like a rock hard boner because you feel love and you're like, oh my God, we were talking about that, and Kelvin's like, dude, when we go through this, is like, do you get a little bit of, I'm like, oh bro, absolutely. Like, oh my God, I'm like, hey babe, look at this. I'd love you to talk about that as well.
That whole aspect of inappropriate boners.
I'm feeling so much love for you now.
I feel like I'm in year 6 and it's maths. Like, being able to like work through that in a moment, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, like there's levels to relationships, and it can open up like a deeper connection that you didn't even know was possible. And it allows so much more trust and safety in the relationship. And like, I've been in relationships in the past where, I thought that was the pinnacle of a relationship. This is great. Everyone's like, I'm like, we never argue, we never fight, and all it was like, we didn't argue and fight because neither of us were like pushing each other. We were just so comfortable in like, it was like decent sex, Netflix, going out for food. There wasn't much else around that. And then eventually that fizzled out because there was no growth, there was no progression in that relationship. So that has just like learning more about myself in these controlled stress situations has given me the ability to not only support myself, but support my partner. And then also allowed me to be vulnerable in a relationship. And within that has just brought us so much closer and like allowed levels to a relationship.
Yeah, I think one of those things is literally just being aware of triggers and like having the ability to talk about those. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's like not like looking at things objectively, and that can be really fucking tough. Like, I'm not sitting here saying like something happens and I'm like, oh, hold on, like I'm just going to step over here and be completely emotionally detached from this situation, because I'm not. But yeah, like having the ability to look at things objectively is a complete game changer in relationships. Yeah,
it's like sort of being able to, like how I'd explain it, would be like, it's there, but it's sort of having the emotional control to be like, okay, I'm feeling this right now, and I can acknowledge it. And you can like mention, I talk about this like before, like you can tell someone you're completely like so angry and frustrated, just like this. You can say, I'm so angry and frustrated and triggered right now, and I just need to let you know that. And, I might need some space, or I'd love to talk about why, if that's okay with you, so that we can resolve it. And then stuff will happen, we'll resolve it, and then you just feel so much love after that. It's great. That's sort of like how I would explain it. I'd also like to know, like from your perception as well, in terms of like recently, in terms of like what sort of, I'd love to hear about a time or a story that you've had some like limiting beliefs that you've sort of changed perception or overcome, like recently, either in regards to that or anything else.
The one most recently for me was money. Like, for me, I had a monetary goal in my mind. And it's funny, when I look back when I was a kid, I was like, I would love to just earn $100 a day. And like, that was the, like, and that's a very good example of, like how you see the world. And like, you're like, that is now the ceiling you set for like, that's my comfortable. That's my, like, Glenn uses this quote a lot. I love it, where it's like, it's not that people aim too high and miss, it's they aim too low and hit. And it's like, when you need to learn to be able to dream bigger. And it's like $100 a day, I'm talking about when I was a kid. But as you go through life, it's really important to question and challenge that. And for me, in the last few months, like, I hit a monetary goal that I'd always wanted to hit for the last, like 4 or 5 years. I was like, if I have that amount of money coming into my account every single week, I can do everything I want and be able to open up more options and avenues for life. And then a month later, I've almost doubled it. And a question I asked you before I started this next chapter with the project coaching and opening up the group aspect of things was like, what's one thing that I need to know, or what's the number one thing you'd tell me right now before I go into this? And you said something along the lines of like, whatever belief you have about your business and the potential of it is purely dictated by you. I think it was something around that.
Just like, I felt quite proud of that. Well, I'll say like you as well. Like I want to give you like really, because you was giving me like real good feedback and like you're a deep thinker and stuff. So when you asked me that question, I like had to really think about it, and I was like, yeah, that's probably it for sure.
Yeah,
So.
and that sat with me, and I was like, when I started to get like the feedback of just clients' results and the trust people have to bring you on as a coach is huge. Like we're not just making a pre-recorded video and sending it to them and be like, yeah, all the best, bro. I hope this works out. It's like dudes are entrusting you with shit that they may have been battling for 10, 20 years, 6 months, a year, whatever that is. It's like there's a deep trust and commitment, and having like so many people trust you in that is real world feedback of you're doing fucking good work. And now it's gotten to a point where it's like, well, if this is possible and I just done this, like what are the habits and actions I need to do to now scale that? How many more people do I need to impact to then leverage this? Yeah. And it's like these constant things are happening in life where I'm starting to understand the possibilities of what's around, and meeting people, like meeting your crew over here in Gold Coast and seeing what everyone else is up to and like where they're taking things. It's like, oh, like I shared this and I shared this on the Instagram story just before I came over here. It's like, wow, when I was in construction, if you were to ask me how my life was, I'd be like, yeah, 7 out of 10. Like making good money, going out most weekends, eating out when I want, putting a bit of money on the side. But my paradigm of a 10 has completely been smashed now. Like my 10, it's like a sliding scale. It's like my 10 now is so different, and my 7 back then would be like a 2 now. And it's really interesting to look at that and like understand that like my view on the world was that, and now it's completely different. And it's like it doesn't happen overnight. It's like consistent practice, consistent trying new things, like asking the quality of questions you ask yourself will dictate the quality of the answers. So like, why am I only earning, $500 a week in this job? Like, why does my manager always give me shit? It's like, why did that girl break up with me? Why do we always argue? And it's like, you're asking disempowering questions that aren't serving you. And if you can bring awareness to the questions you ask, and we do it on the daily, like, why is it when I'm always late that I get all the red lights? It's like, okay, well, hold on. Like, you're responsible for everything that's happened in your life. And I'm not saying like, some people have been through some really fucking tough shit, and that's happened. Yes. And some people have been dealt a really tough hand. I'm not saying that's your fault, but you are now responsible for the story you tell yourself around that and the actions you take moving forward from that. And that can sound really fucking harsh, and I'm not sure if narcissistic or mean.
Oh, but bro, it's a better outcome.
Yeah.
Because if you're not playing it, as you mentioned, if you don't take responsibility for even the worst things that have ever like happened to you, if you don't take, I believe 100% responsibility for them, then you're putting yourself now in a victim mindset, and then you're going to be finding everything that's out there that's a victim thing. Like, oh, I'm not good enough there, and then an opportunity comes, not good enough, things not good enough, things not good enough, whatever. Same happens to me in sales calls. The 1 second that I've like, oh, okay, like I might not be good enough or whatever it is, never works. Every time, like, oh my God. So like, I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and those quality of questions can be shifted. Like, if your relationships keep breaking apart or something, it's like, why do I always attract these type of women? It's like, well, hold on, like, what role did I play in that breakup? And this isn't just for men, this is for women as well. It's like, he cheated on me. Like, it's like, yeah, well, that's a really bad thing to happen. But like, what led to that? Like, what did you avoid that you noticed in the relationship? How were you showing up? And I'm not sitting here and saying it's your fault, but relationships are always 50-50. Sometimes, in an energetic or responsibility aspect, 80-20, 90-10, and it shifts. It's consistently moving. But when we really look at it from when we view out, it's like you're both responsible for how you show up in the relationship. And same with jobs and life and everything else. And if these things keep happening to you, like, I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's 100% your fault, but there's a certain amount of responsibility you need to take in the results in your life. And if you consistently don't take responsibility, life is going to keep happening to you. And you don't get to dictate where you go from here. It's like, because you're creating everything that's happening.
And I personally believe that. So awesome that you said that like choice is freedom. Like, to be the ability to choose in like any sort of specific moment in order to like bring abundance in. And I feel like so many people just in the way things are set up or no fault of their own or not understanding themselves as completely or taking ownership for a lot of that stuff get put in a position where other people or other things, for whatever it is, make slight decisions for them. And because they do, it like limits them. So in terms of like, and I love actually talking about sort of like abundance and like the positivity of things in terms of like, you understand all that stuff and the choices and the fear and things, but like moving forward into abundance is so positively overwhelming, and understanding that and like working towards to getting there and like allowing yourself to like sort of feel unlimited with stuff. How would you like, in terms of like, what does abundance look like to you, and like, how do you get it?
Abundance to me is like, it comes down to freedom. Like, two things I've always valued in life is fun and freedom. Like, a friend asked me years ago, like, why do you get out of bed in the morning? And I was like, oh, like I need to have some deep, insightful answer that's going to like solve all of humanity's problems or something like that. And the only thing that was coming up for me, I was like, at that time, I was like, I just want to have fun. I just want to wake up and have fun every single day. And it was that simple. The thing that's brought me abundance in life is like, touching on what we spoke about before, is like being authentically me. And that looks different for everyone, and it's completely different at different stages of life as well.
Well, what does it look like for you? Because like, I love just talking about from your perception, because you've had so many experiences in life, and I love all the experiences, all the coaching. I'd like to talk about those soon. You've gone some crazy coaching things and done some wild stuff. I want to talk about Preston and Alexi and stuff in a minute. But like, the things that you value, I just loved hearing it. It was so simple. Like, I've got some dogs, I've got a partner and a relationship that I work on, and I'm working on these projects and in these businesses and running my project and stuff, and like, that is what I love. Like, I don't even want to do much else like except that. So in terms of like abundance in that way, like, what does it actually look like in your life with the things that you value, just like even some of the small things?
Abundances come in the way of freedom of choice, but also like I went through a stage in 2 years where I sat 4 Vipassana meditation retreats, which is like 100 hours of meditation over 10 days. We spoke about it on our last podcast. You meditate for 10 hours a day. There's no talking, there's no phones. You have 2 little tiny meals a day. You're probably eating around 600 calories a day. Don't freak out. You do lose a bit of size, but you put it all back on after. And what that gave me was just so much like presence. And to have presence with Selena, to have presence with my dogs, to have presence with the weather outside and what I'm doing, like, that gives me so much abundance, because when I'm like consistently present in those moments, there's nothing else. So that is the only thing that exists to me right now. And when I have that, there's so much abundance in that.
Yeah, I can imagine you just like cherish that so much. And like, how did you get there? Because you've done some pretty crazy coaching stuff, and you've been to like big events and small events and stuff. I'd love to hear you talk about those.
Yeah. Controlled stress application, learning things and integrating it in life, not sitting there and reading books for 10 years.
Experiential learning.
Experiential learning. Yeah. Like I speak to guys in my program about this, okay, cool. We're about to dive into the next 8 weeks. Like, we could sit here and I could, for the next 8 weeks, explain to you how to drive a manual car, how the master cylinder works, how you press the clutch in, when you press the gas, where the first gear is. And the reality is, if you get in a car in 8 weeks, you're still going to be bunny hopping down the road and getting super frustrated. And like, implementing what you learn in life is that controlled stress application. It's like getting in the car and bunny hopping down the road and having my dad try to correct me and me yelling back at him, like, leave me, I can do this. Like, it's exactly an example of like applying personal development and personal growth in life. It is really fucking frustrating, and it can trigger a lot of shit. And it can also bring things up, especially in the father-son dynamic. But like, the biggest thing I've learned was experiential learning, like putting that into practice. I flew over to a 5-day personal development event with people like Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Lisa Nichols, David Woods, Robin Sharma, the monk who sold his Ferrari, like all the high-end personal development people that have been in the game for
like the best
20, 30, 40, 50 years, some of them. And I sat there for 5 days, 8 hours a day. It was a bit of a it was it was a bit of a contradiction, because I was trying to experience Vegas at night, but then I was also trying to go to this event. But in that, like, yeah, I took a lot away and I wrote a lot of notes, and like there were some really cool like one-liners that got dropped and concepts and theories. But the biggest shift for me was those meditation retreats where I just had some crazy shit come through, but also like I went to a 2-day event with Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos, and that was when I was introduced to the concept of experiential learning, where I was like, okay, we came in the room, they done a little talk, a little intro. It's like, hey, everyone partner up in groups of 5. Partner up in group of 5. Hey, what's your name? My name's Mikele. Hey, nice to meet you. My name's Corey. Okay, so one person, turn around, face your back to the group. They give all cards to the group, and then everyone in the group writes if they trust you or they wouldn't trust you. And then also, like it was like 3 things about their personality type, or like 3 things they're not aware of about themselves. You want to talk about confronting and like shadow work and like understanding how you really show up in a room compared to how you think you show up in a room, and like the idea of yourself compared to what people actually see. That can get blown out the water. And I still remember to this day, it was like 3 people said they trust me and 2 people said they wouldn't. And then it was like, what? Like, what did I do?
Yeah, you're going to take that with you forever,
isn't
it?
Yeah. And it's really important to understand, like, you have no idea where they've come from. They may have met someone that looks just like you that ripped them off in a business 10 years ago, and they're bringing that into the room there. So it's really important to disassociate yourself from that. But in saying that, there's also like, there's a lot to take from that. It's holding up a mirror. It's like, oh, you think you're the funny guy that walks into the room that everyone likes? Maybe you're not. It's like, why?
I couldn't imagine like thinking that. I'm like, oh God, what would people say about me? But I'm like, I want to learn that so bad. And you also had, there was one as well that I loved talking about in terms of like money and value as well. You talked about like this paperclip story.
Oh, yeah. So the challenge was, here's a paperclip. You have 2 hours to walk around Adelaide in the city, and you are to bring back, to exchange it for the highest amount of value you can. That was it. 2 hours, go. There was no explanation. I was like, oh shit, okay. So we went out and...
What did you get, by the way?
I got nothing. I got nothing. I had a few conversations and then honestly just avoided it and just shied away from it and came back with like some excuse. What came up for me was like, maybe I can just like grab some money and be like, yeah, someone paid me money for it. Like all these avoiding behaviors came out to not do the thing because the thing was uncomfortable. Like it was really uncomfortable. So we're talking about maybe like, maybe 10 years ago now. And when people came back, you know, there was an array of things. You know, someone was like, I swapped a paperclip for 10 minutes of someone's time, and I sat down with an old lady in a park. There was like a dude who was just like a salesman, and he came back with like $250 or something. And everyone's like, and then there's other people that like no one wanted the paperclip, like it's worthless, and they're like, well, old mate brought over $250 back, so is that true? And that was when I was like, things were really questioned. It's like, this is what you believe is true, but it's like, it's people, everyone else in the room has experienced something different. So what is the truth right now? And then also, then it's like, it almost felt like a bit of a tripwire. Like, go do this thing. This is what we're going to do. This is it. And everyone has everyone took that differently of like, what is the highest value thing I can get for that? Some people really valued the fact they could go give 20 minutes of presents to someone, swallow the paperclip. Someone else done 6, 7, 8 trades to get to $250. And it was just really interesting to, like, I could sit here and tell you that you value money. And you're like, no, I don't. I value communication and relationships and like having an impact in the world or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but like when it actually came to like step on that court and play that game, you came back with money. So it's like, hey, there's no judgment here, but just notice that. Like, bring some awareness to that. Like, why did you feel you needed to get money?
And own it. What would you do after like learning these things? I'd love to hear like, because I know you are like super passionate about running some events and things because you love that experiential learning and you can't wait to like get a bunch of guys together to like run through these things. Like, what would you do if you had like, let's say 10 of the best that could be already in your programs or whatever, and you just had like a workshop day to do stuff? Like, what would you do? What would be the outcomes and stuff that you try to like help people learn, or what were some of the things that you do to try to help people transform themselves?
What would I do?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially that creates situations where people have to get really fucking uncomfortable.
Have you thought about any?
A little bit, yeah. A few. You trying to ask for actual exercises right now?
Yeah, it was like some ideas because I get excited because I'm like, oh man, yeah, I hope you create some of these because I like to come to them.
You know what? A lot of it would just be things I've learnt from past events that's really impacted me, and like I've seen results in others. Okay, one I absolutely love that I feel like I would do again, and I feel like if anyone comes to this, they're going to be like getting the spoiler alert. So if you're planning to come to one of my retreats, just don't listen to this.
No, do listen to this. Get excited. Get ready because it's going to happen.
So one I done when I was speaking at high schools was everyone would get a piece of paper, right? And on this piece of paper, you would write like 3 things you love about yourself. You're like, okay, cool, yeah, easy, done.
Firstly, not easy done. There are some people that struggle really hard to write 3 things they like about themselves. Like, fuck, what do I actually like about myself?
And it's also people who just write on the piece of paper for the fact of writing something.
Yeah.
Like whether it's true or not. It's like, oh, I've got to do this thing. I've got to like show up in a certain way. So that, and then the other side, you would write like, what's one thing no one in this room knows about me? Or like one thing I'm scared to share with everyone in the room. Something like that. No, it was, okay, there's things you tell your friends, there's things you tell your good friends, there's things you tell your parents, but what's that one thing you don't tell anyone that you hold on inside? That was exactly how it was framed. And everyone's like, oh, like, are we going to show this? I'm like, hey, like, don't worry about it. This is just for you right now. So we're going to write this down. Everyone writes it down. I go, okay, cool. Everyone scrunch up your piece of paper, stand up, turn around, and just throw it at someone else. And all the kids stand up and they just start throwing the paper at each other, and it goes nuts for like 30 seconds. They forget about everything. I go, everyone stop. Pick up a piece of paper next to you. Everyone picks up a piece of paper and they open it and they read, the 3 things they like. And then the other side, they're like, what's that one thing you're scared to share with everyone? And it's like, some of them were like, I don't have money to eat at home this week, or my dad's abusive, or my friendship group don't know, I'm a guy and I like other guys. Like, it was this really deep shit. And it was like my friendship group bullied me or something. And like when things like that come up, you see like 3 or 4 or 5 people in the room kind of like, they're like really unsure. They're like, oh shit, like that's similar for me. And the whole point of this exercise is to like understand it's just not you going through this stuff, but it's also to bring awareness to like that kid you're picking on in school might not have food on the table this week. And like, that's what you're doing. So it's like, it's really bringing awareness to everyone else's story and everyone else's experience and things like that. When you can create, when they feel like safe. And it's also that there's a lot of papers that had nothing written on them. So it's like, you do this. I was getting one of my clients, I want him to do this with his sporting club. And it's like, a lot of times there's nothing written on them. It's like, why? It's like, why is there nothing written on this? Well, because they don't feel safe in this environment to even share that. Like, that could be the most, I don't want to say dangerous or scariest, but it's like, it's the most concerning when someone will not share with anyone else they're currently in. And especially if you do this with like a friendship group or like a footy team or something like that, it's like, these are guys you go to battle with on the footy field every single week, and you've got something you're struggling with and you can't even write that on a piece of paper. So it's like bringing awareness to that. It's like, okay, like something about this dynamic needs to change.
Can you please hurry up and organise something for everyone who's listening in Bali so that we can all come, because it's cheaper to go to there than what it is to fly up somewhere in Australia, so we can come and do this exercises, please. Dude, for everyone who's listening, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram,
Yep.
Mikele.k, Mikele.k. You can come check out my stuff, theproject.com. And yeah, Instagram's mainly the one spot I hang out. I've been playing with this whole like idea of going on TikTok because everyone's doing it, but I'm just really hard to take myself there. But yeah, you come check me out on Instagram, man.
And if anyone's interested in any of your coaching stuff, they just head straight to the project.
Yeah, head to my Instagram and you can check it all out there.
Sweet. And also I'd like to leave the listeners with a challenge. So for everyone who's been listening to this conversation and listening about, emotions and men and vulnerability and closing of threads and shock culture of, actually what you can actually do and open up into abundance with things and experiential learning and workshops. Besides Mikele running a workshop already, like if you would like to challenge our listeners with all the stuff that we've talked about in this podcast, what is like one thing that you challenge them to like today or this week, something they can take away? Because obviously we can learn a bunch of stuff, but you mentioned get in the car, start learning. What is something that you like to challenge people to do?
If I could leave anyone with anything, and being like a very avid podcast listener, when I was on the tools, I would listen to like 3-4 podcasts a day. But the thing is, like, you skim over the surface. And, in a week, I probably can't remember most of the things that were spoken about. So it's like, you don't have to listen to 5-6 podcasts today. You can listen to one podcast, you can go back, you can listen to it again. But if you don't do anything after listening to that, it falls on deaf ears. And you go about your business and you go back into your behaviors, patterns, and whatever. So the one thing would be what we spoke about earlier. That one conversation you're avoiding right now. That has been there. This is for you too. That has been there for a long time. An old friend, a current friend, a partner, an ex-partner, a parent, a work colleague, whatever that is. Have that conversation.
Close the thread.
I love it, man.
Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, brother.